A mile after the last gas station, the road signs stopped agreeing with the map. That was the first thing I should have noticed. Not the fog sitting low over the asphalt, not the smell of wet popcorn drifting through the vents, not the faint carnival music that seemed to come from somewhere ahead of me and somewhere inside the car at the same time. The signs. They said Willowmere Fun Park was 3 miles away, then 2, then 5, then 1. Welcome back to Midnight Echo Radio. I'm Seraphine Corvin. Tonight's story comes from a road that has not been on the county maintenance list since 1994, and from a ride that was supposed to have been dismantled after the accident. Keep your hands inside the car, and if the lap bar lowers by itself, do not let it hear you breathing. My brother and I grew up 30 minutes from Willowmere Fun Park, which meant we spent every summer hearing adults talk about it like it had died instead of closed. They never said when it shut down. They said, after Willowmere. After Willowmere, the town lost its tourist traffic. After Willowmere, the motel by the highway painted over the cartoon fox on its sign. After Willowmere, kids stopped having birthday parties with paper hats and tickets tucked into envelopes. Nobody used the full sentence. After Willowmere killed 13 people. That was the version I learned later. When I was 29, I came back from my father's funeral and stayed in his house to clear it out. My brother Mason was supposed to help, but he lived 4 states away by then, and grief had made him practical in the way people get when they cannot afford to be soft. He called every night. He asked if I had eaten. He asked if I had found the life insurance papers. He asked if I had gone through the garage. On the 3rd night, I found the box. It was pushed behind paint cans and a collapsed camping chair, taped shut with masking tape that had gone brittle around the edges. On the side, in my father's block handwriting, were 2 words: park stuff. Inside were old maps, employee badges, newspaper clippings, a rusted keyring, and a stack of ride tickets bound with a rubber band. The top ticket was for the carousel. The next was for the scrambler. The next was for something called the last ride. I had never heard of it. The ticket was black, not faded yellow like the others. Silver ink spelled the name in curled letters, and beneath it, much smaller, was printed, "Valid after closing." I laughed when I read it, because I was alone in my dead father's garage, and people laugh at the wrong things when the house is too quiet. Then the garage radio turned on. Not all the way, just a little burst of music, thin and warped, the kind of tune you hear from an ice cream truck several streets over. 3 notes climbed, 2 notes fell, then static. I told myself old wiring did strange things. I put the ticket in my pocket anyway. I don't know why. Maybe because grief makes artifacts feel like instructions. Maybe because the part of me that was still 8 years old wanted one answer from a town full of people who had learned to stop finishing sentences. Mason called at 10:14. I remember the time because I was sitting on the kitchen floor with the clippings spread around me. Safety complaints, missing maintenance logs. A ride operator named Harold Venn questioned after a child claimed the painted scenes inside the last ride had changed while she was on it. The final article was from October 3rd, 1987. 13 guests dead after dark ride fire at Willowmere Fun Park. The last ride destroyed. Park closed indefinitely. Mason asked what I was doing. I told him I had found Dad's old Willowmere stuff. There was a pause. Then he said, "Don't mess with that." The way he said it made me sit up. "You remember it?" I asked. I remember Dad telling us not to ask about it. That's not the same thing. Another pause. Then, quieter, Mason said, Do you remember the night we saw the lights? I didn't. Not until he said it. Then I did. I remembered being small in the back seat beside him while rain tapped the roof of the car. I remembered my father driving too fast on a road he claimed not to take. I remembered looking through wet glass and seeing colored bulbs turning in the trees. Red, green, yellow, red, green, yellow. A sign glowing between branches. Willowmere Fun Park. My father saying, Lie down. Mason pushing my head below the window. A bell ringing in the dark. Then nothing. Memory cuts itself clean around certain things. Mason told me not to go there. I asked why. He said, because Dad did. After the funeral, before he started locking the garage, before he stopped sleeping in the upstairs bedroom and moved to the recliner with the hall light on, before he spent every October 3rd awake until sunrise. The call ended with Mason saying my name like a warning. I should have listened. At 11:38, I got in the car. The old park road was not marked on my phone anymore. I found it by memory, or by the absence of everything else. A narrow turnoff behind a screen of pine trees, broken asphalt, weeds combing the underside of the car. At first there was no sign. Then there were too many. Willowmere Fun Park, 3 miles. Willowmere Fun Park, 2 miles. Willowmere Fun Park, 5 miles. Willowmere Fun Park, 1 mile. By the 4th sign, the radio had found the tune again. 3 notes up, 2 notes down. This time, under the music, a man's voice spoke through static. Last riders now boarding. I hit the power button. The radio went black. The voice kept talking. Please present your ticket at the gate. The fog opened all at once, and Willowmere was there. Not ruins, not exactly. The parking lot was cracked and empty, but the entrance lights were on. The blind fox smiled over the gate. Ticket booths leaned in their little painted row, windows filmed with dust. Beyond them, the silhouettes of rides stood against the clouds. Ferris wheel, drop tower, a kiddie train with no tracks. Everything still, except for one building at the far end of the midway. A low black structure with painted clouds on its front and a sign edged in silver bulbs. The last ride. Half the bulbs were dead. The other half blinked in a slow pattern, as if the sign were breathing. I parked outside the fence and told myself I would only look. There was a gap in the chain link where someone had peeled it back years ago. The metal scraped my jacket as I slipped through. The midway smelled like leaves, rust, and sugar gone sour. Every step made the music clearer. The park map was still posted near the fountain. The glass over it was cracked, but the colorful paths and cartoon landmarks remained visible. Carousel, arcade, riverboats, snack shack. No last ride. I checked again. It was not there. I looked up. The black building waited exactly where the map showed a picnic pavilion. A ticket booth stood in front of it. No person inside. Just a slot under the glass and a small brass plate. 1 rider per car. No refunds. No exit before return. I took the black ticket from my pocket. The moment I touched it, the booth speaker crackled. Welcome back, Daniel Hayes. That was my father's name. I nearly dropped the ticket. The speaker clicked again. Your party is incomplete." "My father's dead," I said. I do not know why I answered a speaker in an abandoned park. Static filled the booth. Then, very softly, it said, "Then one seat is available." The slot opened, not slid, opened, as if something behind the booth had pulled it inward. I should have left then. Instead, I fed the ticket into the dark. A bell rang once. The entrance doors unlocked. Inside, the air changed. It was warmer, thick with machine oil and damp canvas. A narrow loading platform stretched beside a track. 6 black ride cars sat nose to tail, each shaped like a little coffin with chrome rails and red vinyl seats. The first car's lap bar lifted. A recorded woman's voice drifted from overhead speakers. "Welcome to the last ride. Please keep your hands, feet, memories, and regrets inside the vehicle at all times." The laugh track that followed was too quiet and too long. I turned to leave. The doors behind me were gone. Not closed, gone. Where they had been was a painted wall showing a bright summer day at Willowmere. Families eating cotton candy beside a fountain, the fox mascot waving with both hands. One of the painted children had my father's face. He was 8 or 9 in the picture, wearing a striped shirt, eyes turned toward me. The car bell rang twice. The overhead voice said, "Boarding is mandatory after ticket acceptance." I climbed in because panic makes obedience look like a plan. The lap bar dropped across my waist. It was cold enough to hurt. The car moved. The second room showed the park on opening day. Painted crowds, painted balloons, a spinning sun with a smile. Then the car slowed. The music warped downward. A spotlight clicked on, illuminating a family painted beside the carousel. A father, a mother, 2 children. Us. Not almost us. Us. My mother in the blue coat she wore in every old photo. Mason with his chipped front tooth. Me holding a plastic dinosaur. My father standing slightly behind us with one hand raised, not waving, warning. The paint was fresh. I smelled turpentine. The car lurched forward. The next room was not painted. It was the midway outside, but younger, whole, lit. People moved through it in loops, not quite walking, not quite being pulled. Their faces were blank where features should have been. Every few seconds, one of them turned toward my car as if hearing me breathe. At the popcorn stand, my father stood in his funeral suit. He looked at me. He mouthed one word, "Out." Then darkness took him. I started shouting. The speakers answered with applause. The track dipped. The third room smelled of smoke. Here the painted panels were blistered black. Sirens wailed from hidden speakers, and orange bulbs flickered behind torn scenery. The last ride fire. October 3rd, 1987. Figures were painted on the walls, running with mouths open. 13 of them. But as my car passed, I saw there were 14. The last figure had not been painted yet. It was only an outline, a pale shape sketched in primer near the exit door. My height, my jacket, my hand gripping the lap bar. A brush lay on the floor beneath it, wet with red paint. The car stopped. For a moment, the ride went silent. Then a work light snapped on above the track. An old man sat in the operator booth ahead. He wore a striped Willowmere shirt and a paper hat with the fox logo. His skin looked like wax that had cooled wrong. His name tag said Harold. Harold Venn, the operator from the article. He smiled without showing teeth. "Your father skipped his turn," he said. I could barely speak. "What?" "He accepted a ticket. He boarded. He saw the last scene." Harold leaned toward the glass. "But he brought children, little ones, soft ones. The ride likes soft things." The lap bar tightened. "He traded years," Harold said. "Every October, every sleepless night, every room with the lights left on. He paid until he had nothing left to pay." The car jerked forward. "Balance due," Harold whispered. The next room showed my father's garage, not as it had been, as I had left it an hour ago. Paint cans, camping chair, the box marked park stuff. On the workbench, my phone lit up. Mason calling. The scene was three-dimensional now, a perfect replica in dust and old wood. My car passed close enough that I could see the cracked screen protector on my phone. The call ended. A text appeared. "Don't go." Then another. I remember the second car. The car turned a corner. The fourth room was the road home. My car. Headlights on, driver's door open. No one inside. An ambulance parked sideways across the asphalt. Police lights painting the fog red and blue. Mason standing beside the road in pajama pants and a winter coat, speaking to an officer, his face broken open with panic. I saw the date on the officer's report clipboard. Tomorrow, 7:16 a.m. Cause of death pending. Beside the scene, a painted fox held a sign. "Your photo will be ready at the exit." I screamed until my throat hurt. The ride did not care. It entered the final room. At first I thought it was empty. Just black walls, one track, one spotlight on a painted backdrop at the far end. Then the backdrop brightened. It showed the loading platform where I had boarded, the 6 cars, the operator booth, the missing doors. Everything exact, except there was someone sitting in the first car. Me. Not a painting. Me, strapped in, staring forward with my mouth slightly open. The car I was in rolled toward the car I was in. The overhead voice returned, cheerful and calm. "Thank you for riding. Please remain seated until you have returned." The 2 cars touched nose to nose. For a second, I saw myself from both sides. I saw my own eyes fill with the understanding that there had never been a way out because the ride did not take you somewhere. It returned you to the moment you chose to get in. Again and again. And every loop painted more of you into the walls. I do not remember escaping. I remember the lap bar lifting. I remember falling onto the loading platform. I remember the entrance doors existing again and crawling through them on hands that looked gray in the sign light. Outside, the park was dead. No music, no bulbs, no fox. Just ruins behind a fence. My car was still in the lot. The dashboard clock read 12:07. It had read 12:07 when I arrived. I drove home without turning on the radio. At 7:16 the next morning, Mason knocked on my father's front door. He had driven all night. When I opened it, he looked at me, then passed me into the garage and started crying. We burned the box in the backyard. The maps curled first. The clippings blackened. The ride tickets flared green at the edges. But the black ticket would not burn. It sat in the coals without changing, silver letters bright as moonlight. Valid after closing. Mason used barbecue tongs to lift it into a coffee can. We drove it to the river and threw it from the bridge that did apparently exist after all. Neither of us spoke on the way home. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then the garage radio turned on. 3 notes climbed, 2 notes fell. Mason and I stood in the kitchen, listening to static seep under the door. A man's voice said, "Party of 2, now boarding." The old road was blocked by a new gate from the county, heavy and bright, with a sign that said, "No trespassing." Past it, the asphalt disappeared into trees. I stood there until the sun went down. Nothing lit up, no music played, no fox smiled from the dark. I started to feel foolish. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo came through. It was grainy and overexposed, like something printed in a booth that had not been serviced in decades. A ride photo. 6 black cars on a track. In the first car sat my father, younger than I remembered him, eyes wide, one hand gripping the lap bar. In the second car sat Mason and me as children, heads bowed below the side of the car, like someone had told us to lie down. In the third car sat me at 29. In the fourth car, empty seats. In the fifth, the family who bought the house. And in the sixth car, someone had been painted over. Not erased, reserved. A space in the shape of a person, primer pale against the black seat, with one detail already finished. My face. Under the photo there was a caption, "Thank you for riding with Willowmere. Your party is incomplete." Every October now, the image updates. Not much. A little more paint in the reserved seat. A hand. A collar. The shine on an eye. Last year, the background changed. The sixth car was no longer on the track. It was stopped in front of a house I did not recognize. This year, I recognized it. It was mine. The photo arrived at 12:07 a.m. Through my apartment wall, just once, I heard a bell. 3 notes climbed, 2 notes fell. And somewhere very far away, or very close, a woman's recorded voice said, "Please remain seated until you have returned." If you ever find an old ticket in a box of things someone meant to throw away, check the color. Yellow tickets remember where they were sold. Black tickets remember who still owes the ride. And if you drive past a road sign that changes its mind about the miles, keep driving. Do not slow down for the lights in the trees. Do not listen for the music. Do not present your ticket at the gate. Because some rides do not close. They wait. They count empty seats. And after midnight, they open for anyone still missing from the picture.